Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McGlynn.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy, but we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. At question number 1, I call Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it is made of the number of police officers in Edinburgh and the Lothians in light of the growth in the population of South East Scotland and the additional policing duties here in the capital.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, deployment of officers is a matter for the Chief Constable based on operational priorities. The Scottish Government's record investment in policing enabled Police Scotland to take on more recruits in the last financial year than at any time since 2013. As of 30th of September, there were 1,106 officers deployed to Edinburgh and 888 to Lothian and Borders. In both divisions, this is more than the previous quarter and broadly similar to the same time last year. A range of regional and national resources are also available to assist local officers following the creation of a single service.
Miles Briggs.
The Cabinet Secretary will be aware, and I've raised this on several occasions, that Edinburgh now has one of the lowest police to population ratios in Scotland for years now, at the same time as we are seeing a growing population, 3 times the Scottish average. This is also resulting in many of our police stations having public counter closures more and more regularly, and Edinburgh's City Division having fewer officers available now than it did in 2017. It is clear that pressures here in Edinburgh are impacting on our police services and the ability to police the capital. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if she'll agree to meet with Lothian MSPs to look at the developing challenges which our police service is facing and how this can be considered, especially given the capital status of Edinburgh?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, as a West Lothian MSP, I'm very aware of the growing population across the Lothians. That, of course, has a bearing on a range of public services. In terms of policing, as I said in my original answer, these are operational matters for the Chief Constable, and she can move resources as she sees fit in accordance to threat, harm and vulnerability. I'm very pleased that due to the investment of this government we have seen a stabilisation of police numbers, and of course I would be happy to meet with Mr Briggs and other colleagues, notwithstanding as long as they are very aware of the clear divide between ministerial responsibilities and operational matters.
Brief supplementary, Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scotland has a higher number of police officers per capita than England and Wales. Can the Cabinet Secretary provide details of the pressures facing Police Scotland as a result of the UK Government's hike in employers' national insurance?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, this year's record police funding of £1.64 billion is supporting police capacity and capability, ensuring that our police officer numbers per 10,000 of the population of Scotland remain considerably higher than England and Wales. As members will be aware, we have continually urged the UK Government to fully fund the £400 million additional costs to employer national insurance contributions that they imposed on Scotland's public services, including Police Scotland. This, of course, wasn't done for this financial year, and as yesterday's chaotic mess of a UK budget confirmed, this increase remains in place. And I would note that the increase in funding for Scotland's budget won't even cover half the shortfall from the cost of this hike on Scotland's public services.
Cabinet Secretary. Question number 2, I call Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on progress made towards issuing Scottish Government bonds in light of Scotland's recent high credit ratings.
Deputy First Minister.
Following the excellent credit rating results, the Scottish Government is making all the necessary preparations to ensure a multi-year bond programme can commence next year, 2026-2027. As the First Minister announced earlier this month, the total size of the programme is expected to be £1.5 billion over the life of the next parliamentary term, subject to in-year borrowing requirements and market conditions.
Jackie Dunbar.
These positive credit ratings are testament to Scotland's track record of responsible fiscal management, and it's welcome that the Government remains on track to commence the bond programme in 2026-27. Can the Deputy First Minister say any more about how this is anticipated to support the Scottish Government's investment in key infrastructure?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the credit rating results are absolutely excellent for Scotland, and they confirm that this country is high investment grade. As the independent investor panel pointed out, a credit rating and a bond issuance can act as a means to increase investor engagement in Scotland. It's a gateway to broader investment, enhanced visibility in global capital markets and a stronger platform for economic diplomacy. And I'm delighted that we've been able to deliver on this recommendation that was suggested to us in the report of the investor panel.
Brief supplementary, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is welcome that the Scottish Government is exploring innovative ways to raise extra capital, in addition to the normal method of raising it through the National Loan Fund. What scenarios does the Deputy First Minister envisage bonds being issued? Would it be in cases where there's high returns, such as investing in Clyde Metro or the Scottish Events Campus expansion, or could it also be used for NHS projects like the new Institute of Neurosciences in Glasgow?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I'm pleased with Paul Sweeney's welcome of this step, and it's important to state on the record that this is about borrowing better. It's not about borrowing more. So it's about borrowing within the limits that are set through the fiscal framework. And he's absolutely right to say that this can be used to fund infrastructure development. It will be used for capital infrastructure. So he cited some examples of capital infrastructure. And as we undergo this process, there will be then decisions taken about what infrastructure will be funded through this process.
Question number 3, George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it's taking to preserve and enhance historic buildings in Scotland's town centres.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government is supportive of historic buildings and town centres being preserved and regenerated, and provides support for our historic environment through sponsorship of Historic Environment Scotland, which received £74.2 million in grant and aid funding in 2025-26. And this funding helps Historic Environment Scotland maintain properties in its care, deliver grants to the heritage sector, undertake research on the effects of climate change on historic buildings, and fulfil advisory and regulatory functions. And they also provide advice to property owners, local authorities, developers and community groups. And this helps to protect our historic environment while supporting jobs, skills and vibrant communities.
George Adam.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the answer. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that actions to preserve historic buildings, like those undertaken in Paisley's Museum, Library and Town Hall, help retain a cultural focus as well as create an economic footfall within town centres, and is a way forward for town centre regeneration, while at the same time bringing these buildings, these historic buildings, making them fit for purpose for the 21st century?
Cabinet Secretary.
I agree with all of that, and I thank him for raising these particular projects in Paisley. The Scottish Government is pleased to see this cultural investment in Paisley. It's a good example that demonstrates culture can be both a tool to drive the economy, as well as providing a wide range of engaging and enjoyable cultural experiences for our citizens. I'm particularly glad to see the focus on accessibility within such projects, which allows more of the local community to participate and benefit from cultural activities.
Thank you. Question number 4, Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government will it provide an update on the Just Transition Plan for the Mossmorran petrochemical site?
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is focused on securing a just transition for workers to avoid jobs being lost and a repeat of the industrial devastation inflicted on Scotland by Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s. There is no doubt, however, that the closure at Mossmorran is a profound challenge to that just transition approach. And our focus is rightly on the workers and the communities who will be affected by ExxonMobil's shock announcement. Within our limited economic powers, the Scottish Government is focused on securing new opportunities for those workers. Our work at Grangemouth means we have a strong foundation to build on. We have line of sight to businesses who may wish to invest and understand the needs of workers and communities. Scottish Enterprise have the unique expertise to secure new investment at both Mossmorran and Grangemouth. And it's important to note that the site in Mossmorran does not just consist of the Fife ethylene plant. We have assurances that the Shell NGL plant will remain in active operation.
Alexander Stewart.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. With 400 employees and contractors facing redundancy at Mossmorran, and yet a transition plan that the Scottish Government promised in early 25 still hasn't materialised, instead of a blame game between both governments, when will the Scottish Government take responsibility to protect the sector and end their presumption on oil and gas to prevent job losses in the oil and gas sector supply chain?
Cabinet Secretary.
Two parts to that question. I just want to outline what we committed to do. On the 19th of March 2024, I went to discuss decarbonisation projects at the site with ExxonMobil, which will actually provide the impetus for a just transition plan. Then Dr Allen followed up with that on the 28th of October 2024 with ExxonMobil. But since then, it's been very difficult to get engagement with them. Officials were engaging with the business since June to try and secure time, because as we always said, once the Grangemouth Just Transition Plan was out, that we would work on a Mossmorran one, and of course the Grangemouth Just Transition Plan is only out in the last couple of months. But also Alexander Stewart is blaming Scottish Government for this. The business have actually been very clear that UK Government policy has added to the market challenges that they face, particularly energy prices and carbon taxation.
Thank you. Question number 5, Colin Beattie.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide further details on the progress on the A720 Sheriff Hall roundabout project.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The Scottish Government continues to support the promotion of improvements to Sheriff Hall roundabout as part of its £300 million commitment to the Edinburgh and South East Scotland City Region deal. As the member will be aware, a public local inquiry was held to consider the significant number of objections received, and the independent reporter has submitted her conclusions and recommendations. This is currently under active consideration before advice is provided to and a decision made by Scottish ministers on whether to complete the statutory process. While I am keen to see progress made, it is essential that due process is followed and that careful consideration is given to the substantial volume of information which will inform Ministers' decision.
Colin Beattie.
Many of my constituents are growing increasingly concerned about the delay with progressing the Sheriff Hall Interchange project. Can the Cabinet Secretary give my constituents in Midlothian North and Musselburgh any comfort regarding timelines for the delivery of this scheme?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I would like to reassure the member that the Scottish Government remains committed to delivering improvements at Sheriff Hall. While I cannot give a definitive timeline today, I want to reassure you that ministers recognise this as a priority, and my officials are actively reviewing the reporter's report, along with the considerable number of objections to inform the next steps. Funding for the project remains part of the City-Region deal.
Question number 6, Beatrice Wishart.
To ask the Scottish Government what measures it can take to ensure that critical national infrastructure serves the local communities hosting it and is built safely, securely and in a way that is sensitive to the landscape around it.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you. Critical national infrastructure are assets assessed to be critical to the functioning and security of the country. This process enables the Government and its partners to prioritise and better understand and mitigate the risks threatening these critical sites. There are currently 13 officially designated CNI sectors where responsibility is split between relevant devolved governments and the UK Government. Scottish devolved CNI sectors include government, transport, including roads and bridges, emergency services, health, water, food and chemicals, and UK Government reserved CNI sectors in Scotland include energy, transport, including aviation, rail and ports, emergency services, including the Coast Guard, communications, finance, civil, nuclear, defence and space. And due to their criticality, the details and locations of CNI assets are classified and not publicly available. The assessments are carried out on existing infrastructure. All building, environmental, planning and related regulations or legislation should be adhered to during the planning and build phase. However, CNI owners and operators are given extra support.
Beatrice Wishart.
The Cabinet Secretary for that response. Today in Shetland, another major developer is hosting a local event about future energy connections across Shetland. The oil and gas industry has been a critical part of Shetland's economy for the past 50 years, and Shetlanders are not against innovation, but many have raised with me a feeling of our islands being swamped with new energy developments. People who tolerated the divisive Viking wind farm development are now pushing back against what is described as the continual and creeping industrialisation of Shetland, including proposals for more pylons across the landscape and a green ammonia plant. One constituent who asks for all cables to be underground writes, and I quote, "The push for renewable energy is attributed to providing a future plan to tackle climate change, but will there be a future for Shetland if all proposed developments go ahead as planned?" So does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that when communities like Shetland host significant national energy generation but continue to have high levels of fuel poverty, that there's something wrong with the system? And does she agree that local communities...
Thank you, Ms Wishart. Thank you. Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I absolutely agree with Beatrice Wishart. There is something very wrong with the system in which communities are asked to host critical infrastructure, but they're still paying the highest electricity prices in the whole of the UK. And that's why I've been advocating for a number of measures at UK Government level in terms of reforms, about a decoupling of the electricity price from the gas price, first of all, which was taken off the table as part of the REMA consultation and never brought back on when the new government came in place, but also for the social tariff, which would actually make a difference to those of particularly vulnerable households. But I met this morning with the leaders of Shetland Council on the need for more community benefits, not just from critical infrastructure, but also from energy development in general. We are updating our good practice principles on that, but I am pleased to say, although the previous UK Government weren't interested in having the voices of communities enhanced, or indeed enhanced community benefits put in, mandated in law, the current government are actually consulting on this issue.
Thank you. Alexander Burnett.
Presiding Officer. Now, my constituent Matthew Greedy of Dunect will incur a £125,000 loss on the sale of his property, all evidenced by qualified chartered surveyors, and all because of a proposed Kintor to Teeling pylon route. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what assessment she has made of the financial impact of these pylon routes on homeowners, and whether she will now establish a compensation scheme for residents who can demonstrate material financial loss arising from the pylons that will see the destruction of rural Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr Burnett is making reference to an application that has not been put into the Consents Department of the Scottish Government, and even when it is a live application, he will know full well that I cannot discuss it in public.
Question number 7, Michael Mara.
Government touted supporting stability and growth in Scotland's video game sector, including what engagement it has had with Rockstar Games in light of reports of recent staff dismissals.
Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, just before I answer, will you indulge me in welcoming pupils from Fortrose Academy who have just arrived in the Chamber? And to the specific question, we are fully committed to supporting Scotland's thriving games ecosystem, and this year we supported the prestigious DICE Europe Conference in Edinburgh, maximising benefits for Scotland's ecosystem and showcasing our industry to the world. Regarding Rockstar Games specifically, we have engaged with the company and reiterated that we expect all employers to treat staff respectfully and engage openly with workers and trade unions.
Michael Mara.
I know the Deputy First Minister will stand with me saying that our thoughts are with the staff affected by those redundant dismissals at Rockstar Games. And in recent weeks, I've heard from people working in the games sector across Scotland who say the demands of the sector, including what is known as crunch, a period of mandatory overtime prior to deadlines, is actually leading to burnout, high turnover staff and make the industry far too inaccessible to too many in Scotland. In that context, there are rightly growing calls for unionisation within the industry. Does the Deputy First Minister agree with me that workers' rights to organise must be upheld, and she will make sure that any government funding is contingent on that basis?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I agree in full with Michael Mara, and I believe that he's the co-convener of the cross-party group on the Scottish Games ecosystem, and I know he'll share my view on the importance of fair work principles being embedded in all businesses and in all amongst all employers. So I absolutely agree with that position.
Brief question 8, Carol Mockin.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the financial sustainability of Ayrshire College.
Minister Ben McPherson.
Ayrshire College does remarkable work, particularly in the aerospace sector, and I very much valued and appreciated visiting the college on the 11th of November. I greatly value the significant contribution that all colleges make to our economy and society, including Ayrshire College, and recognise the significant financial pressures that the sector is facing. The Scottish Government cannot comment specifically on the financial position of an individual college, such as Ayrshire College. However, the Scottish Funding Council continues to engage closely with the college sector, monitoring financial sustainability and providing appropriate forms of support tailored to the circumstances of individual institutions.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for that answer. Forecasts show that most colleges are not sustainable. Ayrshire College is facing a £2.1 million reduction in core teaching funding over and above the 20% real terms cut since 21-22. This is a huge blow, which is already making the college have to take difficult decisions. Does the Government recognise this, and it must urgently work with the colleges and its trade unions to address these funding challenges and ensure that we both secure jobs and young people's education and make sure these are both protected?
Minister.
Since coming into post, I have greatly valued engagement with Colleges Scotland and with individual colleges and across the Chamber on the challenges facing the sector, but also the huge opportunities. And Ayrshire College is showing leadership with the Prestwick aircraft maintenance limited partnership, providing real-world opportunities where there is significant demand for the opportunities that are available. And I commit again to working across the Parliament on the challenges and opportunities that our college sector faces.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. And at question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Rachel Reeves has increased taxes by £26 billion. Under Labour, taxes will be at their highest levels in history. By freezing income tax bands, millions of workers will be forced to hand over even more of their wages. And the Labour Chancellor is not only screwing taxpayers, she's also borrowing even more money, leaving more debt to future generations. And she did all of this, despite saying that she would do none of it. Does John Swinney intend to keep the SNP manifesto promise not to raise tax on Scottish workers?
First Minister.
Obviously the Government is giving consideration to the implications of the United Kingdom budget for the Scottish budget, but the Finance Secretary confirmed this morning that the Scottish Government will not increase income tax rates or introduce any new bans.
Russell Finlay.
John Swinney stood on a manifesto promise to freeze income tax rates and bans.
Let's hear Mr Finlay.
He stood on a manifesto promise not to raise income tax or bans. And the same John Swinney then stood right there and delivered a budget that raised income tax.
How can we trust you?
And then 1 year
Let's
later,
hear Mr Finlay.
1 year later, the SNP again raised income tax. And on November the 6th, when John Swinney was challenged about this broken promise, he had the audacity to claim that this was, quote, not out of kilter with the SNP manifesto. And looking very much like Joe Biden, John Swinney actually seemed to be completely unaware of what he had done. And to make matters worse, Presiding Officer, on November 13th, he then misled Parliament by falsely claiming to have maintained his manifesto commitment. So when John Swinney says or suggests that he won't increase income tax, how can anyone trust a word that he says?
First Minister.
What a wandering lot of drivel that question was.
Thank you.
Mr Finlay makes a habit of coming to this chamber and not reading out the complete paragraphs from party manifestos that set out our position. We set out our manifesto position in 2021, but we said that we had to be mindful of the economic context. Yeah. And the economic context was fundamentally changed by two things. Yeah. One, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which led to a spike in inflation and massive increase in public sector costs. And secondly, the absolute rank and total stupidity of the Liz Truss budget that Russell Finlay supported. That's what changed the landscape.
Russell Finlay.
What a cheek. The master of wandering drivel speaks. This is the guy that broke income tax, raised income tax, broke his manifesto promise twice. You always have to read the small print with the SNP. Yes. Scotland's workers, families and businesses deserve to know if more of their hard-earned money is going to be swiped by the SNP. But John Swinney cannot be trusted about any tax rises he's possibly planning. And one group who are increasingly concerned is the Scottish Association of Landlords. They say that Rachel Reeves' new property income tax could be the final straw, and that this could harm tenants by jeopardising the supply of rental properties. Now, Rachel Reeves has handed the SNP the power to introduce and to even increase this tax in Scotland. And given the damage that's already been done by the SNP's rent controls, does John Swinney accept that this new tax could further damage the rental market for tenants?
First Minister.
The Scottish Government has put forward legislation which has been approved by Parliament that introduces rent controls but also enables Scotland to be an attractive market for housing investment, and that is demonstrated by the dialogue the Government is having with the investment sector, and of course any decisions about these issues will be set out in the budget in January.
Russell Finlay.
So the SNP are forcing Scottish taxpayers to constantly pay more and more and more. And before the budget, they'd already set aside around £150 million to end the cap on universal credit for families with more than 2 children. But given Labour's decision to scrap the 2-child cap, the SNP can now spend that money on something else, not on more benefits. There is another way, a common-sense way that would reward hard work and help the economy. We believe that Scottish taxpayers deserve to keep more of their own hard-earned money. They deserve fairness and they deserve a break from higher bills. So will John Swinney instead use that £150 million to instead cut income tax?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I've made it clear that the mission and the purpose of my government is to eradicate child poverty. Now, I welcome the fact that the United Kingdom Government has taken the decision from the 1st of April to abolish the 2-child cap, which was put in place by the previous Conservative Government. It is an atrocious intervention in the benefit system, and I'm glad that my government has shamed the Labour Party into acting on this particular issue.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have also set out on previous occasions that what the Scottish Government will do in the situation that we now face is that the money that we'd allocated to lift the two-child limit, which was an initiative taken by the SNP Government in the face of votes against such a proposal by Labour MPs in Westminster, that we would allocate that money to reduce child poverty even further than the reducing levels of child poverty in Scotland under this Government. So when Mr Finlay attacks me for asking people on higher earnings to pay more in tax, I'm prepared to do that so that I can work to eradicate child poverty, which is the best thing for the future of our country.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. 18 months ago, the people of Scotland got rid of a Tory government that had done so much damage to our country. Clearing their mess was never going to be easy, but UK Labour
Let's hear Mr Sarwar.
Clearing their mess was never going to be easy, but UK Labour choices are making a difference. Yesterday, the UK budget delivered an increase to the minimum wage and living wage, meaning another pay rise for 200,000 Scottish workers. Help with the cost of living, with £150 off energy bills, £300 off for those most in need. Reinstating the winter fuel allowance and raising the state pension, benefiting 1.1 million pensioners in Scotland. £820 million more for the Scottish Government, with £10.3
Thank you. Let's hear Mr Sarwar.
This is their constituents benefiting with £10.3 billion more since Labour came to power, and the end of the two-child cap. The end of the two-child cap, meaning 450,000 children lifted out of poverty across the UK and benefiting.
Mr Sarwar, you may put a question now. You may put a question now, or I will ask the First Minister to address the comments you've made.
I'm asking the question.
Please do.
You've intervened twice already. Benefiting 95,000 children in Scotland. So will John Swinney. They're heckling poverty reduction. Who would have thought it?
Mr Sarwar, I have asked you, Mr Sarwar, in future when I ask you to put a question at that point. Continue.
So will John Swinney welcome the greatest reduction in child poverty from a single budget, from a UK budget this century?
First Minister.
Utterly ridiculous.
I thought members of Parliament were supposed to keep up with what was said in Parliament. I've already welcomed the abolition of the two-child limit because this government shamed the Labour Party into action in the first place. Labour MPs have been trooping through the lobbies of the House of Commons to vote to keep the two-child limit since they came to office 18 months ago. It's been an absolute disgrace. Now, I'm glad that the Labour Party has realised that there's an election coming in May and that possibly the face of a Labour Party driving up child poverty in the United Kingdom may not be a good look for the Labour Party in Scotland. But what I'm very pleased to say to the people of Scotland is that child poverty is falling in this country, in Scotland, because of the actions of an SNP government.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister is delusional. The SNP had the power to end the two-child cap for 8 years and did nothing. UK Labour scrapped it after 18 months. The sad truth is the SNP preferred the grievance. Now, for 2 years...
Let's hear one another.
Now, for 2 years, John Swinney has argued for income tax to rise in England and Wales. That would have led to a cut in Scotland's budget based on the fiscal framework he himself negotiated. It proves he hasn't got a clue. While he was arguing for Scotland's budget to be cut, I was arguing for more investment, and the UK Labour government delivered. Given that £5.2 billion was received last year and completely wasted by this incompetent and tired SNP government, doesn't it prove we need a change of government here in Scotland so Scots can feel the benefit in our schools, in our hospitals, police and public services?
First Minister.
Oh, he's trying awful hard today to get himself excited. Let me set out to Mr Sarwar the choices that this government made.
Let's hear one another.
This government decided to prioritise the introduction, the only part of the United Kingdom of a Scottish child payment. That exists in no other part of the United Kingdom, and we use the resources that we've raised in Scotland to make sure that could be delivered so that child poverty is falling in this country. Secondly, Mr Sarwar talks about the increase in resources that are being made available, and he's right, there's going to be an extra resource funding of £510 million over a 4-year period. The 1-year increase in employers' national insurance contributions in Scotland was estimated to be around £400 million. So there we have it, an average increase in our budget of £127 million eaten up by an increase in employers' national insurance contributions by a Labour government. So what this government will do is what it always does, which is concentrate it will concentrate our public expenditure on the priorities of the people of Scotland. And why does that matter? Well, that matters because it delivers for the people of our country, and secondly, it demonstrates, as was proven by the credit rating agencies, that this country benefits from prudent fiscal management, from prudent financial planning, and that's what an SNP government delivers.
Anna Sarwar.
I think John Swinney needs to cheer up a little bit. An additional £10.3 billion for Scotland's public services. That's a transformative amount of money, but the SNP can't be trusted with people's money. NHS waiting lists remain unacceptably high, our schools falling down international league tables, police numbers cut and rising crime on our streets. It's why Scots are asking, where has the money gone? And that's why we can't risk a third decade of the SNP and John Swinney. So isn't it the case that in May Scots have a clear choice? More wasted money and wasted opportunities with John Swinney, or a government that respects your money with me? Police stuck in A&E and courts with John Swinney, or police on our streets and safer communities with me?
Let us hear Mr Sarwar.
They don't want to hear it, Presiding Officer. Long waiting lists with John Swinney, or an NHS fit for the future with me. It's the past with John Swinney, or the future with me and Scottish Labour.
First Minister.
Okay, let's start with waiting lists. And my government's priority is to bring down waiting lists, and particularly long waits. And what's happening between April and October this year is that new outpatient waits of over a year reduced by 17.9%, the 5th consecutive month in which waiting lists were falling for long waits. In the same period, the waiting list size for new inpatient day case procedures over 52 weeks has reduced by 26.1%. So the plan that I put in place, backed by the resources that we've invested, that the Labour Party wouldn't vote for, is now reducing waiting lists in our country. And if Mr Sarwar wants to own the budget of the United Kingdom government, he has to own its consequences. And the consequences are that today, people's fuel bills are still higher than they were when Labour came to office. They are not going to be lower, as Labour promised. There are going to be job losses in the north east of Scotland, which Anna Sarwar is going to be responsible for because of the actions of the Labour government. So I will invest the people's money wisely in boosting public services and strengthening the economy, and I will leave Anna Sarwar to dream about what he might be able to do if he convinces the people of Scotland when this government is delivering for the people of Scotland.
Thank you. Before we move to question 3, I would just remind members that those in the gallery would like to be able to follow proceedings, and I call Ross Greer.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Last week I asked the First Minister for the Just Transition Plan for Mossmorran workers that his government promised that it would write 18 months ago. He twice avoided answering that question. Since then, we've had 3 summits in as many days involving the Scottish and UK governments at Fife Council. At none of those has the Scottish Government provided the plan that it committed to write. The Scottish Greens spent years working with the trade unions representing Mossmorran workers and the wider community to produce plans of our own, because we all knew that this day was coming. Now, hundreds of workers face losing their jobs within weeks, and their government has no plan to help them. Can the First Minister please just admit that there is no Scottish Government plan to support the Mossmorran workers and apologise that his government did not deliver on the commitment they made?
First Minister.
So what the Government is doing is taking the learning that we took forward from the issues that we addressed in Grangemouth, where the Just Transition Plan has resulted in a range of different business development opportunities emerging, to apply that in dialogue with the trade unions, interested parties, Fife Council, the United Kingdom Government and the company in taking forward the future of Mossmorran. I very much regret the circumstances that are faced by the workers at Mossmorran, and the Deputy First Minister and the Scottish Government are working assiduously with all interested parties to deliver a future for those affected by the decision that's been taken at Mossmorran.
Ross Greer.
Presiding Officer, wouldn't it have been great if the Deputy First Minister was able to attend these summits with the plan for jobs that her government had committed it would write 18 months ago? These workers have been abandoned by ExxonMobil, and despite knowing about the company's plans to cut and run, there was absolutely nothing from Mossmorran in yesterday's Labour budget. But these workers have also been let down by a Scottish Government which, when push comes to shove, has no new ideas. The Scottish Greens have one we want to put to the First Minister today, though. Grangemouth rightly has a Just Transition Fund, and Unite the Union ensured that as a condition of getting any money from that fund, organisations must offer job interviews to anyone made redundant from INEOS. Will the Scottish Government now do the same for Mossmorran workers?
First Minister.
Yes, I'm happy to confirm that. That agreement that was reached with Unite was announced by me a few weeks ago, and I very much applaud the collaboration that's been taken forward with Unite the Union, who've been partners with the Government in dealing with the situation in Grangemouth and are partners with the Government in dealing with the situation at Mossmorran. Now, I think I picked up Mr Greer correctly in his question, where he made the point that there had been prior notice about the decisions at Mossmorran. Not to the Scottish Government. We had about a week's notice. The United Kingdom Government knew about it for months, and they never sorted it, never fixed it, never addressed it, never intervened like Scunthorpe or any other situation where they decide to intervene. So it just goes to demonstrate that there's one rule for the rest of the United Kingdom and one rule to Scotland when it comes to industrial closures under a Labour government in London.
Question number 4, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what impact the Chancellor's autumn statement will have on Scotland.
First Minister.
President Officer, as I indicated a moment ago, there will be financial consequences for the Scottish Government's budget as a consequence of the budget yesterday, and I welcome the decision to remove the two-child limit, which the Scottish Government was already planning to mitigate in March of next year. There will, of course, be consequences for the public. Their energy bills will not be cut by the £300 that were proposed by the Labour Party. Energy bills will still be, on average, £340 higher than the Prime Minister promised they would be.
Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the First Minister for that response. Yesterday's UK budget came after weeks of chaos, dithering and U-turns by the Chancellor amidst an ongoing cost of living crisis, downgrading of UK economic growth every year until 2029 and public finances in a worse state now than when Labour came to power. Does the First Minister agree with Scotland's Chambers of Commerce that the budget's net effect will be to further dial up pressure on businesses, risking our reputation as a magnet for global investment? And does he share my concern that while thousands of Scottish oil and gas jobs are at risk from Labour tax policy, energy bills after this budget next April will still be £340 more per household than the Prime Minister promised a year ago, while UK unemployment has risen by 282,000 on Labour's watch?
First Minister.
Well, President Officer, on Mr Gibbs's last point about unemployment, of course, unemployment is now significantly lower in Scotland than it is in the rest of the United Kingdom, and I welcome that indication of good performance in the Scottish economy. Indeed, that point was of good economic performance in Scotland was recognised by Moody's and Standard & Poor's in their assessment of Scotland's credit rating. In addition to that that point, the decision not to abolish the Energy Profits Levy will have disastrous consequences in the north east of Scotland, and the Labour Party will have to own those consequences, and we will make sure that they do. And in relation to the points on on energy prices, individuals were promised a cut of their energy bills of £300, and that is not happening under the Labour government.
Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Rachel Reeves yesterday made the same mistake as John Swinney with a Benefits Street budget, which increased tax on workers, pensioners and savers. The Scottish Benefits Bill is set to soar to close to £10 billion by the end of this decade. How does John Swinney intend to pay for that?
First Minister.
The Scottish Government will set out its budget in January, which will, of course, follow in the pattern of all the budgets that we have set out have been a balanced budget. That is why, because of all these years of balanced budgets under the SNP government since 2007, Standard & Poor's are able to say that Scotland benefits from prudent financial management, and Standard & Poor's are able to say Scotland benefits from prudent financial planning. I would have thought the credit rating agencies, these independent voices who comment on economies around the world, would be some solace, some comfort to Mr Hoy. It might give him something to be cheerful about, that we've got such strong financial planning that even Mr Hoy should be satisfied with our performance.
Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Of course, it would be churlish not to welcome the about turn on the two-child benefit cap. Better late than never. And that, of course, benefits the children and families. But what it also does is it puts money into the local economy, because that money helps people pay for inflationary food, inflationary energy. So it's a good thing all round.
First Minister.
Yes, and it also complements the work that the Government is doing, the Scottish Government is doing on the Scottish Child Payment, for example, where we're putting money directly into the household finances, which enables families to spend locally, to have more control over their resources and better able to support their families. And that's exactly the type of impact that will be felt in Christine Graham's constituency, as it will be in constituencies of the length and breadth of Scotland.
Question number 5, Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister how the Scottish Government plans to commemorate the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, last Friday I launched the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence in my own constituency in Perth City. And ministers will take part in a national leadership event, a vigil, a parliamentary debate and visit local projects. Tackling gender-based violence is not a commitment for only 16 days, it is a commitment for 365 days. That is why we will continue to implement our Equally Safe strategy, which focuses on prevention and is backed by £21.6 million of expenditure for this current financial year.
Pam Gossel.
I thank the First Minister for that response. Presiding Officer, I want to start by welcoming representatives from Women's Rights Network Scotland, Byra's Place and survivors of domestic abuse to the Parliamentary Gallery. Today, we held a vigil outside the Parliament, remembering the 46 women who have been killed by men in Scotland in the past 5 years. Behind every statistic is a real-life story of a woman whose future has been erased and whose family has been shattered. Shockingly, these statistics are continuing to rise. Presiding Officer, the latest figures show almost 64,000 incidents of domestic abuse recorded by Police Scotland, while at the same time there has been an 11% increase in reported rape cases. And not to forget grooming gangs operating in Scotland that the SNP Scottish Government want to believe are not a problem, instead are sticking their heads in the sand. So will the First Minister finally commit to backing my Prevention of Domestic Abuse Scotland bill, which will better monitor perpetrators and prevent potential victims from becoming victims in the first place? And will he do the right thing and agree to the grooming gangs inquiry so we can uncover the true scale of abuse of women and girls that are occurring in Scotland?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, there are many issues raised by Pam Gossel, so I would be grateful if I could give very serious issues to which I would like to give substantial answers. First thing I want to say is I want to welcome the groups that are here and commend them for their courage and commemorate the 46 women who have been killed by men every single woman that is killed by a man in our society is totally unacceptable as a crime, and it appalls all of us, regardless of our politics. The second point I want to raise is in relation to the question of the bill that Pam Gosal has brought forward. The Government will engage constructively on this bill. We have already legislated through different measures. The Criminal Justice Modernisation and Abusive Domestic Behaviour Review Scotland Act is one example, and the previous domestic abuse legislation to strengthen the legislative position so that there is absolutely no tolerance of domestic violence in our society. Now, on the question of grooming gangs, this is a very complex issue to which the Government is giving very detailed consideration. On Monday, along with the Justice and Education Secretaries and the Minister for Children and Young People, I was briefed by Police Scotland and by the National Childhood Sexual Exploitation Group about the prevalence of these issues in Scotland. Yesterday, the National Group met to review these issues, and I have personally conducted a discussion with Professor Alexis Jay on these issues. Now, I hope all of these details that I have put on the record today will give Pam Gosal and colleagues in Parliament the confidence and the assurance that the Government is looking in detail at all of these questions. Nobody is putting their head in the sand. This has been looked at in detail because there are complexities about the interaction on the call that has been made for us on this issue with the child abuse inquiry that we have already statutorily established. So there are no straightforward ways through this issue, but I assure Parliament that the Government is giving every serious consideration to this important issue.
Ruth Maguire.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Prevention of male violence in all its forms is preferable, both morally and practically. This session we have an opportunity to legislate to tackle male demand for prostitution and really disrupt a trade in women and girls that's both a cause and a consequence of violence. Does the First Minister agree that we must do all we can to ensure this legislation is fit for purpose and passes so that we can finally make good on a policy position that we've held for decades? That prostitution is violence against women and we will not accept the harm it causes for a second longer.
First Minister.
President Officer, as the Victims Minister made clear to the Justice Committee last week, whilst the Scottish Government strongly support the principle of legislating to criminalise those who purchase sex, we retain a neutral stance on the prostitution bill. It is clear that a number of stakeholders have voiced concerns about the safety of women, and it is paramount that legislation put forward to this Parliament must be safe for women involved in and exiting prostitution and recognise online exploitation. This is paramount alongside a number of other issues within the bill that the committee has heard about and must be addressed by the member in charge of this bill is to have the confidence of Parliament. And I assure Ruth Maguire of the sustained and detailed attention and engagement of the Government in taking forward this legislation and contributing to the discussion about addressing these issues.
Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. One of the only areas of gender-based violence that is condoned currently by the Scottish Government is the violence of prostitution. Now, I welcome the Government's support for the qualified support for the principle of my unbuyable bill, which will give police the powers that they need to close this gap in the law. But will the First Minister meet with me and a group of survivors so that he can hear firsthand the horrible realities of prostitution?
First Minister.
As Ash Regan properly sets out, the Government is engaging constructively on this bill. I'll be very happy for the Minister responsible to engage with Ash Regan and with others on this bill. But there are, as I said in my response to Ruth Maguire, and I say this out of a desire to be helpful in this respect, there are challenging issues within the bill that we have to address properly to make sure the legislation can be applied, and that will be the process the Government will engage in.
Question number 6, Alec Rowley.
Presiding Officer, to ask the First Minister, in light of ExxonMobil's announcement of the closure of the Mossmorran ethylene plant, what action the Scottish Government is taking to mitigate any damage this will cause to the Cowdenbeath area and to the wider Scottish economy?
First Minister.
President, I want to reiterate my deep disappointment and concern at this decision and assure the workforce at the Fife ethylene plant but the Scottish Government is committed to doing whatever it can to safeguard the jobs there and secure an industrial future for the site. The Deputy First Minister has engaged extensively with all those with an interest in supporting the workforce and the local economy at Mossmorran, including the trade unions, workforce representatives, Fife Council and the United Kingdom Government, which holds the levers for an industrial intervention of the scale that we have seen in England and Wales. We have also joined partners, including Fife Council, in calling for a pause to the closure to ensure that all options to secure the industrial future of the site have been exhausted. And I welcome the participation of Mr Rowley in the discussions on Monday.
Alec Rowley.
Firstly, Presiding Officer, I would want to acknowledge the hard work and professionalism shown by the Deputy First Minister in mobilising the key stakeholders that will be required to begin to deal with the impact of this announcement. I attended a meeting on Tuesday at Fife College where ExxonMobil were very clear that the feed to the site will be shut off in February and that the closure will go ahead as announced. So can I ask the First Minister, while Fife Council will chair the task force that has been set up, does he acknowledge that if we are to achieve a new industrial future at Mossmorran, creating significant opportunities in skills and employment, then the Scottish Government will have to play a major role in coordinating that response? And does the First Minister accept that in order to address the impact of the closure, we must see substantial investment from both the UK and Scottish Government?
First Minister.
First of all, President Officer, let me correct the fact I referred to Monday when in fact the meeting was on Tuesday. But regardless, I welcome Mr Rowley's participation in that discussion. Let me confirm to Mr Rowley that the Scottish Government will be an active and critical player in the response in Mossmorran. We will engage, as Mr Rowley and I have worked together long enough to remember engagements previously on issues in relation to previous industrial closures in the Fife communities that he has championed, and we will do that again in this case and work collaboratively with Fife Council. Obviously, Scottish Enterprise have a lot to contribute to this process, with many projects emerging out of the work that's been undertaken on a preparatory basis in Grangemouth. That full intelligence will be available to the group in Mossmorran, and I obviously recognise that there will be resource implications of all that's involved, which the Government will consider as part of our budget process.
Thank you. Move to constituency and general supplementaries. Concise questions. Give more members concise questions and responses. Give more members a chance to take part. I call Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Whisky Association has warned that the Chancellor's decision to further increase duty on the Scotch whisky will put additional pressure on a sector already suffering job losses, stalled investment and business closures. Does the First Minister agree that this was the wrong decision, given the challenges facing the industry, and can he highlight what the Scottish Government is doing to support the sector?
First Minister.
President Officer, the issues that Mr MacDonald raises are very important and significant, and the disparity in alcohol duty that should have been addressed in the budget went unheard. There is now going to be a rise in duty rates of 18% in 3 years. This is an important sector to the Scottish economy, and obviously, as Mr MacDonald will be aware, I have worked assiduously over the summer to try to ensure that one of the other issues that presents challenges to the Scotch whisky industry, which is the tariffs applied by the United States, were to be resolved. I await the outcome of the United Kingdom Government's approach on this question, and I am becoming increasingly concerned that no solution has been offered, despite the hard work that has been put in on this issue. But I do recognise that the industry is operating in a very challenging environment, and the Scottish Government will support it in any way it can.
Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, Scottish sports governing bodies are collectively saying that they are increasingly unable to deliver core functions due to a continuing squeeze on their funding. Not only are increasing numbers of competitors being asked to pay for representing the country, projects designed to increase participation opportunities reaching out into our communities, especially in the most deprived areas, are being cut. First Minister, there is much talk of improving the nation's health through early intervention and prevention. Surely physical activity is the very essence of improving physical and mental health. So can I ask if it is the intention of the Scottish Government to honour their manifesto pledge from 2021 to double the sports budget by the end of this parliamentary term?
First Minister.
So I've received correspondence from a number of sports organisations on this important question, and I acknowledge the centrality of the points that Mr Whittle makes and the necessity for investment, and the Government is investing in the sport and active living budget £46.43 million. And we're obviously operating in constrained financial circumstances, and we will do all that we can to boost the funding available for sport. I don't want to sour these exchanges, but I would point out to Mr Whittle that his party leader has just demanded that I use £150 million for a tax cut. Yeah. And Mr Whittle is shouting at me, spend to save. The money has to be available to spend in the first place. Absolutely. And that comes about by constructive engagement about the budget, and the Conservatives have voted against the budget last year. I don't know what they're going to do this year, but I do encourage Parliament to come to considered conclusions about the priorities in the budget, and the Government will be willing to engage with members on that question.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister may be aware of the case of Leo Husman, who recently completed an optometry course at UHI. Leo is a British citizen who lived abroad with his family, but they were forced to flee to Scotland. But because they're British citizens, are not considered refugees. The Scottish Government allow universities to waive higher and university fees for migrants and refugees who seek humanitarian protection. Leo has paid home tuition fees to UHI, but they're now asking for £23,000 as an overseas student in order that he can graduate. He's a job lined up and a supportive employer, but simply doesn't have £23,000. If he does not graduate, his 4 years in university will be totally worthless and his skills will be lost to Scotland. Leo has written to the First Minister, and I'm asking the First Minister today if he will intervene simply to allow Leo to graduate so that his qualification doesn't go to waste.
First Minister.
I haven't seen that correspondence yet, but I'll ask my office when I return there after the First Minister's questions to put that to me. I'll look at that case and see it. Rhoda Grant makes a completely reasonable and understandable point. When I look at ophthalmology waiting lists, then more optometrists might actually be quite handy. So I'll have a look at the issue and do what I can to help.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today, people across Aberdeen and the North East are worried about their jobs, their families and the future of their communities. Investment in the North Sea is at a record low, and a Robert Gordon University report states jobs are being lost at 1,000 a month. Despite the swathe of warnings from experts, Labour failed to scrap the energy profits levy this week and remained wedded to this tax on the North East. Does the First Minister share my concern that Labour's choices will cost jobs and drive a more rapid decline in the North Sea? And what steps will his government take to preserve skills, save jobs and ensure a truly just transition?
First Minister.
As I've indicated already, I'm deeply disappointed that the energy profits levy remains in place. I think it is deeply damaging to the prospects of employment and opportunity in the North East of Scotland. The Scottish Government is putting in place support to the tune of more than £120 million invested in the North East through our Just Transition and Energy Transition Fund to support the region's transition, and we will continue to be steadfast supporters of that transition in the North East and supporting the communities as they face a very challenging situation that's been made worse by the preservation of the energy profits levy.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, Forth Valley Health Ward Maternity Services at Larbert is the latest maternity service to receive a damning report from an unannounced inspection. The report highlighted that mothers were being put at serious risk and that some had to wait up to 62 hours to be induced. Therefore, what is the Scottish Government doing to ensure that lessons are learned from this report and that safeguards are put in place to protect mothers and their unborn babies as a matter of urgency?
First Minister.
The purpose of the review reports that have been done into every maternity service in the country is to make sure that these practices are actively challenged so they can be improved. And that is what is underway. That's why Forth Valley has been inspected. It is, I think, the third inspection that has been undertaken. And if I look at the example in Tayside, which was the first investigation, many of the recommendations that have been made in relation to service in Tayside have now been implemented, and that will be the position in Forth Valley.
Jackie Baillie.
A report this week by Hospice UK found 2/3 of hospices in Scotland have made cuts or are planning to do so within the next year due to financial pressures. Every time there are salary rises in the NHS, hospice staff do not directly benefit, and therefore there are pressures on recruitment and retention. At the same time as the Scottish Government is considering the funding of proposals for assisted dying, can I ask the First Minister, does he share my view that we should assist hospices with funding of salaries to the same level as the NHS in future?
First Minister.
President Officer, on the question about hospice costs, I'm very sympathetic to this point. In July of this year, £5 million of funding was distributed to support independent hospices to deliver pay parity for clinical staff with their NHS counterparts. So that's the government intervening to do exactly that. Now, of course, what's difficult for hospices is when they get surprises, like employers' national insurance contribution increases, because that puts up the costs of employment. And Jackie Baillie raised with me the financial pressures, and that bluntly is where some of the financial pressures are coming from. Now, I very much want to do all that we can to support the hospice movement. I have enormous respect for it, for the movement. I think the issues in relation to hospice care and palliative care are central to the human rights of individuals in our society. Jackie Baillie knows that my public position, this is a personal position, it's not the government's position. I am opposed to the assisted dying legislation, and I don't think it's appropriate for the issues of palliative care and assisted dying to be in any way connected. I think they are very separate issues, because the rights to palliative care for individuals in our society are absolute, and we should do all we can to support the sector, and the government will do all that it can in that respect.
Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Monday is World AIDS Day, and despite huge progress across the world in the development of treatments to prevent and manage HIV, we cannot fully rest in our efforts until a permanent vaccine is universally available across the world. Scotland has, of course, signed up to the ambition to eliminate all new cases of HIV by 2030, and I'm pleased to say that we are making very good progress on that, but it is that last cohort of people living with HIV with complex cases who will be both the hardest to find but also to treat, First Minister. So can I ask if the Government is fully committed to further rolling out opt-out testing for HIV, universal access to PrEP in Scotland, but also recommit his government to that shared ambition that Scotland can and probably should become the first place in the world to eradicate all new cases in the next 4 years?
First Minister.
I welcome Mr Green's question, and I warmly recommit the government to that objective by 2030. The operational plans that are being delivered to achieve that are, as I think Mr Green fairly states, are on track. There is good progress that is being made, but we have to sustain that focus to make sure that we can achieve that objective. I think it is part of a global effort, and we only succeed in global efforts if we start here and addressing the issues here. The one other factor I would add is that we also must tackle stigma, because there is still too much stigma around HIV, and as a tolerant, respectful and courteous society, we should do all that we can to eliminate the stigma around HIV as we work together to achieve the objectives that Mr Green has put to me today.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a members' business debate in the name of Jackson Carlaw, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and the public gallery to do so.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McGlynn.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy. But we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.